For more of what's happening in New South Wales, I'm joined now by the Deputy Premier and Leader of the Nationals Party, John Barilaro. Thanks so much for your time today. Let's first of all start with, we just heard obviously in the past hour that we do have one new case of COVID in New South Wales. From your understanding, last time we were waiting for the border to reopen with Queensland, we had to go, I think it was 28 days with any community transmission. Is it a similar story this time? Have we been reset after those 2 days without any cases?
Well, good morning, Charlotte, and thank you for having me. Look, the truth is that, I've said this before, if it's a 0, it's a 1, if it's a 4 or a 5, the numbers themselves aren't actually the measure of success. It's what actually happens behind those numbers. And, you know, this term community transmission is one that you've got to apply appropriately. In these cases, they're either household or close contacts of someone that's previously had it. So we know exactly how or why they have been infected and why they have now COVID. And that in itself is okay. We know that if there are infections and you're in the same household, more than likely someone's going to be infected. So what we look to is the data that says that this virus isn't actually amongst the community in a way that is risky. Now, there's always going to be risk. I've always said that. But in this case, those numbers like number 1 this morning or 1 again, the test numbers are low. 14,500 is low. We need to get that over 20,000 people just to be more confident with that data. But look, I'm confident that we can start looking at restrictions and lifting restrictions, and furthermore, those other states to get rid of the red zones and open up the borders.
We'll get back to the restrictions in a moment, but it's actually 1 month today, I believe, since the Avalon cluster first broke out. How pleased are you with the progress that the state has made?
Yeah, look, I was acting Premier for that week last week, and I got to see a lot more detail in what occurs with Dr. Chant and her team. And, it's clear for me that the work that's been done is done in a way that looks at being fast and hard and localised when we're dealing with an outbreak, and that's what occurred with Avalon and the Peninsula. And in one way gave us the success that we've had today. And, 1 month on where we've got, no real cases down or any. And the truth is that hopefully it has been eliminated in that area. And we've got a couple of little outbreaks. And that's 2021. Can I just say that? 2021, we're going to have to coexist with the virus. We've learned a lot since the last year, over the last period, that we can do that. The Avalon cluster, the Peninsula approach was one that showed we can do it, that we can do it quite easily. And that's how we'll do this year. And we've got to get to some level of normality, not shut down the economy, and be positive that even though there's a rollout of the vaccine on its way, for the big part of this year, we'll still have to live with it.
Yourself and the Premier have said multiple times, that we get on top of these clusters and they will not be the last. Even yesterday, Gladys Berejiklian had said, great that we're getting 0 cases, this will not last. There will be another outbreak, there will be another cluster. She's been adamant about that. We seem to be the only state saying that, though. Every other state believes that they seem to think that they can completely eradicate it and not have any outbreaks. Are we all getting the same health advice? Because every state is saying that they're being advised by their chief health officer, but ours does. I'm not saying that it's not working because we are keeping the economy running, but where is this differing information coming from?
Well, again, the Western Australian Premier McGowan, believes that the approach is an eradication approach. That's never been the approach by this nation or any states, and I was pretty vocal about that last week with the Premier of WA. It is a suppression approach. It's about making sure that we control the spread within the community and that we do whatever we can to stop it. That's not eradication. You've heard from all of them that we'll always have this virus floating throughout the community, and while our borders are open, the risk is always going to be that's a human system. Something can fail. Victoria and Queensland actually supported that position of ours, that it is still a suppression approach. And we are kidding ourselves if we believe we're going to eradicate the virus. It's just not going to happen. So what we've got to do is do what we've always done, and that is live with it. When there's an outbreak, as the Premier said, there will be more. We go hard and local and fast, deal with the outbreak, but in the whole, try and keep the state open, economy open, and start rebuilding our nation. And that's going to be our approach. This approach that WA talks about, or others talk about, having 0 cases, an eradication model, is unfortunately been the measure of success that we've sold, and probably through our narrative and language over the past 4 months, is probably we've done ourselves an injustice. That is not success. Success is actually just being in control.
We know it was indicated yesterday at the press conference that there are going to be restrictions easing this week for New South Wales, which is very exciting. What would you like to see ease back?
Yeah, look, again, pre-Christmas or pre the Avalon outbreak, the task force where the Treasurer, Minister Stuart Ayres, Victor Dominello, myself, Brad Hazzard and the Premier, we sort of relaxed the restrictions to a level that we believe will be the new norm here in New South Wales, until such time the vaccine kicks in. And getting back to 2 square metres for hospitality venues, allowing more people in your home that you could host, to have more people in churches or at a funeral. And of course, the wedding functions, those businesses are really doing it tough. And we're still in the middle of probably what would be one of the peak seasons for weddings. We need to capture that. And they're the areas that I would love to see some restrictions lifted. But there's always some level of restrictions. But I think if we can get those right, get back to that pre-Christmas position and call that the norm, that'd be great.
We are so close to hopefully the finishing line of this pandemic. I know it's going to be another tumultuous year, but we are starting to, really make some progress with the vaccine. Because of being this close to the finishing line, do you think that the New South Wales government is likely to be more conservative with these lockdowns, that they will be more frequent because we are so close, it is kind of almost within reach, that they'll lock places down more frequently or go harder and faster than we have previously?
Well, I think what we proved with Avalon was we want the most minimum of all restrictions. And I think if you look across the country, our state has probably the lowest level of restrictions and more freedom for our people, especially in regional and rural. And that should apply again in metro. But what we always said, that to live like that, we've got to be able to respond when there's a response required. And that's what happened in Avalon. So we go hard, fast, localise the restrictions, which could be quite severe, get on top of it, as we've done, and therefore not have to minimise, not tamper with restrictions elsewhere. And I think we've done that really, really well. And I think the difference pre-Christmas and New Year's, we allow a little bit of emotion in because, we've had a tough year in 2020. Christmas is a spiritual time. It's a healing time. It's a family time. We've got New Year's. It's a time to celebrate. And I think in one way as a government, we try to balance that. But now, as we get back to normal, back to work, I think it's easier to make some tough decisions at a harder and a faster rate if we require. And I think that's the approach going forward. And minimalising, touching the other restrictions that allows industry to keep going. We just can't turn on and off like a light switch those industries because they take time to ramp up.
Just for something different, I'm going to do something quite outlandish here and steer away from COVID. What is the agenda for the Nationals parties this year? What do you want to achieve here in New South Wales?
Yeah, look, a great question. And, 2020 was a tough year for everybody because of COVID. But, leading into 2020, you look at the regions, it was drought, severe drought, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in some parts of the state. Then we got those horrific bushfires that really smashed us in the bush. And then we got into COVID. So we got through all of that. The rains have arrived. There were no bushfires this summer. 2021 looks very positive for the regions. Tourism is up. People are looking to the regions maybe to relocate after COVID. There's a sense that you can actually live in regional rural New South Wales, but still be connected through a digital means to the fast lane of Sydney in your job. And I just think that there's this sense of optimism in the bush. So we'll capture that. We'll build those special activation precincts to attract investment. We'll continue to focus on delivery of our infrastructure pipeline, new schools, new hospitals, new roads, rail. It's exciting stuff that's happening in the bush. And then, of course, the biggest issue that I think we face in the bush is health. And that is the delivery of health services, the lack of GPs, the lack of specialists. Even though we're building some of the best modern hospitals and MPSs and infrastructure, the service side of it needs attention, and that'll be the focus for me, my party, and the government in 2021.
Well, maybe post-COVID you'll find a couple of nurses and doctors that are looking for a sea change or potentially going into the bush. Thanks so much for your time this afternoon, Deputy Premier John Barilaro.
Thank you very much, Charlotte.